When is the Securities and Exchange Commission really the Environmental Protection Agency? When it requires businesses to disclose the environmental impact of their work? My next guest has proposed a bill to rein in this SEC overreach by blocking that climate impact requirement. Here to discuss is Wyoming Republican Senator John Barrasso. Senator Barrasso, it's a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Great to be with you again. Thank you.
So in addition to the welfare state, sort of a self-perpetuating state of entitlements, we also have the regulatory state, some part of the government that is not transparent, that is not accountable, but just is able to regulate us and impose regulations upon us. How did we get there?
Well, the Securities and Exchange Commission did this themselves by a vote of 3-2, partisan lines, said we want all the businesses in this country to report the impact of climate change as part of their SEC filings. Remember, these are the people that couldn't figure out what was going on with Bernie Madoff. And I've now introduced legislation that says the SEC cannot require that sort of activity. Look, it's hard. This administration is making harder and more expensive for the private sector to create jobs, and to me this adds additionally to the burden and the costs. And with 9.2% unemployment in this country, Judge, you'd think we should be finding ways to make it easier and cheaper for the private sector to create jobs, not throw additional burdens on our job creators.
Senator, I commend your legislation and I hope it passes, but it is a sad statement on our government, our present government, that we even need this legislation. Let me get this straight. Congress votes down regulations, the EPA enacts them. Congress authorized the SEC in 1934. Nobody was worried about environmental impact then. You could read all the legislation authorizing the SEC. There's no authority for it to regulate the environmental impact. It goes and does it on its own. Do you think that this administration is trying to use these regulatory agencies to control private behavior because it knows that the people's representatives in the Congress would never vote to enact those regulations?
You know, the people of this country voted in November to put a restraining order on the legislative agenda of this administration. And now what this administration is trying to do is through regulations do the things that they cannot accomplish with legislation. And that's where the fight is now. Even this week, the Environmental Protection Agency is supposed to come out with some new regulations on ozone. They weren't by law even supposed to look at them until 2013. But oh no, they know better than we do, apparently. They think they know better than the American people, and this is going to hurt businesses, hurt jobs, hurt our ability to get people back to work. They don't seem to care.
Switching gears, what's the latest on the debt ceiling? Is the government going to get authority to borrow more money and dig us deeper into a hole without making meaningful cuts? Is there still a standoff between the Republicans in the House and the White House itself, or is there some common ground?
Well, there is the standoff in the sense that the president wants a blank check. He wants a new credit card, and I, for one, am not willing to give him that. If he wants to have the debt ceiling raised, then we need to have cuts, more cuts dollar for dollar than he wants the debt ceiling raised. He's come up with his figure of $2.4 trillion, and it only has to do with, as he said, and his Treasury Secretary said, get it beyond basically the president's re-election date of next November. And I think the president should not be putting his re-election efforts ahead of the needs of the American people. And I think now we are focused on what Speaker Boehner is proposing, which is a two-step process of raising the debt ceiling by about $1.2 trillion, but having more than that in cuts.
Got it. Senator John Barrasso, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Judge.